Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar by MEED this week on the Saudi Arabia Giga Projects program, one of the hottest topics, if not the hottest topics right now in the Middle East project space. My name is Edward James. I'm the head of content and research at MEED. And for the next hour or so, I'll be giving you a presentation on the various Saudi Giga projects, looking at them from different perspectives, and also at the end of the presentation, answering your questions. Now, as usual, this presentation is being recorded and will be made available to all of you afterwards. So if you are not able to note down everything that you see today, you will have an opportunity to view the recording of this later and share with your friends and colleagues. Also, you will be receiving the actual presentation itself during the course of this webinar. Via email, provided you have registered for it. You will be receiving the presentation itself, again, to be able to look at your own time. Now, let's proceed with the presentation. First of all, there is a lot of data today throughout the presentation. Most of the data is sourced from MEED.com and from MEED Projects. These are, of course, our projects, intelligence, news, features, and analysis platforms. If you want to know more about them, then please visit the websites MEED.com and our projects tracking database at meedprojects.com. And it's by tracking all individual projects, including those in the Giga Project program, that we are able to present the data today from both a granular and a macro level. So please check these out if you are not already subscribers. I'd also just like to add before we start that in association with this webinar, we are releasing a comprehensive, detailed report on the Saudi Giga Projects program. It's coming out at the end of this month. It's more than 400 pages of in-depth examination and analysis of each of the 15 or so Giga projects in the kingdom, including each of the package breakdowns, contract award details, and the individual project elements described within the report. If you are interested in the report, then please contact us about purchasing it. Here we are offering you a exclusive $100 discount for everyone on the call today. Use this discount code and you have the opportunity to get access to the report once it is published later this month. Now, this is a very popular webinar or topic. As I mentioned, we have well over 2,500 people and companies registered today for this event, and clearly the Saudi Giga Projects program is something that everyone is talking about right now, especially as other markets seem to be very slow right now, and where this Giga Projects program is really the main activity in town today. Okay, let's kick off with the presentation itself. As ever, if you do have any questions for the Q&A session after the presentation, please use the Q&A box to ask them. The earlier you submit your question, the more likely I am to be able to get around to answering it. We normally get more than 100 questions, so it's not always possible to answer all of them. So please take advantage of the Q&A box to submit your questions, and then during the Q&A session, I will go through them and try to answer them quickly. Okay, so the Saudi Giga Project program. So the Saudi Giga Project program is about 15 individual but very sizable projects across the Saudi Arabia, primarily in the touristic, residential, commercial, industrial space. And They're clearly part of the Saudi 2030 vision to diversify the economy, to develop some of the more outlying areas of the kingdom, and to create jobs and develop new sectors such as tourism. They are very much, therefore, intrinsically linked with the future of prosperity and the future direction of the kingdom, and they have been given top priority by the government. Generally speaking, the Giga projects are split between those which are 100% owned by the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, and then those which are being implemented by other government agencies, and I'll come to those in the next slide. Now, currently, all of the Giga projects are being funded directly by the state, although over time it is expected that each of the project companies will have to raise financing themselves. Indeed, some already have, and they're also expected to attract private foreign and local investment. And over time, they're expected to each become a little bit more commercially viable and stand on their own 2 feet. Similarly, some of them are expected to enter into an IPO over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, as we mentioned, these projects are part of the 2030 vision, and therefore all are expected to be implemented on a fast-track basis. And we expecting to, as a result, to see a very significant ramp up in project activity over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, so the projects themselves, as I mentioned, fall into 2 different types: those which are owned directly by the Public Investment Fund, and those which are owned by or being developed by other agencies. You can see here on the left-hand side, we have the PIF subsidiaries. We've got, of course, NEOM, the biggest one of all, the Red Sea Development Company, Boutique Group, Amala, the new one only announced last week, Saudi Downtown Company, Qiddiya, Roshan, Seven, Rural Medina Holding, Jeddah Central, and Suda Development. And then on the right-hand side, you can see here those which are not part of the PIF. That includes the Diriyah Gate Development Authority in Riyadh, the Royal Commission for Al Ula, and then 3 projects under the Royal Commission for Riyadh City, Green Riyadh, Riyadh Sports Boulevard, and King Salman International Park. And we'll be looking at most of those during this presentation today. Okay, so in terms of the geographical split or location for each of these projects, as I mentioned, quite geographically diverse, looking at, in some areas, at creating totally new project ecosystems and tourist destinations in areas which until now have never really been developed. Largest of all in the far northwest is NEOM, of course, probably the world's largest project at about $500 billion. This is a totally new greenfield city, tourism hub, industrial hub, and work now is well underway. As I mentioned, $500 billion, of which about $13.4 billion has already been awarded in terms of construction contracts. Then down the Red Sea, we have Amala, a $5 billion luxury resort. We have the Red Sea project, $16 billion, just a little south of that. These are 2 new tourism resorts to develop tourism industry. In the kingdom, we've got Al Ula, the cultural and touristic destination in the UNESCO World Heritage Site in the northwest. And then we've got other projects like Rural Medina, which is about developing the city of Medina, Jeddah Central, which is about reviving central Jeddah. We've got Suda, which is about developing the Asir Arabian Highlands. And we've got various other projects, the Russian affordable housing project, which is across the kingdom. Qiddiya, of course, the new entertainment district outside of Riyadh. We've got Diriyah Gate, also to the west of Riyadh, which is again a cultural, residential, commercial development. And also finally, within Riyadh itself, as I mentioned, we've got the Great King Salman International Park, Green Riyadh, and the Sports Boulevard projects. Now, all told, there are some $719 billion worth of known projects as part of the Giga Projects program in the kingdom, of which just under $30 billion have so far been awarded. So we're less than even 5% of the total expected value of work to be awarded as part of this program over the next few years. And of course, this is just the Giga Projects program. This excludes all other construction, tourism, transport development in the kingdom, all power and water work, oil and gas work by Aramco and so on. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but it is something that right now everyone is looking at. And really this is the reason why. As you can see here, there's been a very significant acceleration in contract awards over the last 5 years, going up from $293 billion in 2018 up to 3.3 in 2020, 10.7 last year. And this year, year to date, with a couple of months remaining, we're already at $13 billion or so. And that number, of course, is going to rise before the end of the year. So we can see a very significant increase, and that's going to continue. And as procurement increases, more tenders are issued, therefore interest continues to grow. Now, in terms of work already awarded by clients, you can see that NEOM is the has awarded the most amount of work, more than $13 billion to date. Red Sea Development Company on the Red Sea project has awarded more than $6 billion. The Royal Commission for Riyadh City, which is doing the Sports Boulevard and Salmon International Park projects, close to $4 billion, and then so on. So you can see that each of these project clients are ramping up. Some are a little behind compared with others. The Red Sea project is, I think, arguably the most advanced of all the projects so far. But as you can see, we're only really at the very beginning of the Giga project program. There's literally thousands of contracts and work to come over the years ahead. Just to give you an illustration of some of the key contracts already awarded, the selection of them here, we've got the renewable energy project for the Helios NEOM hydrogen project and electrolysis unit to produce green hydrogen and then ammonia for export. Some $4 billion is the value of the contract. Larsen Toubro will be carrying that work out, which involves a large amount of solar and wind capacity, and under the development under Aquapower as the key developer. Then we've had 2 major contracts awarded this year to a combination of Chinese, Korean, and local firms worth more than $4 billion for the main tunnels along the backbone infrastructure for the spine at NEOM. We've also got the Royal Art Complex as part of King Salmon International Park awarded earlier this year, the Six Flags theme park underway, the super basement awarded to Italian contractor Rebuild earlier this year, and so on. I won't go through each one, but as you can see from the right-hand side, a lot of international and regional and local contractors have been involved so far in the main contracts for the Giga Project program, and that illustrates really that the program is open to both international and regional and local suppliers and contractors, and that there is opportunity for everyone. Indeed, there may well be too much opportunity, because it remains to be seen whether there is enough contracting, engineering and supply capacity to meet all of the intense plans in the short term at least, and that's something we'll touch on later. Okay, so now I'm going to just go through in depth a couple of the Giga projects themselves, and then I will go through in more briefly some of the other ones, and just to illustrate some of the individual projects themselves. Now, by far and away, the largest project is, of course, NEOM. It's probably the world's largest project with a total investment value of about $500 billion. I'm sure everyone is very well aware of this plan. There was a big fanfare a month or so ago over the launch of the line, which has taken the imagination of everyone around the world. And this is a project that clearly over the next decade or two is going to be a major source of project activity. Now, the line is the NEOM, as you would expect for a $500 billion project, is a complex project comprising many different individual components. Effectively, the project is effectively split at the moment into three main regions, and there may well be more to come over time. Those are the line itself, which is the main residential project over a distance of 170 kilometers, which was hit the headlines a couple of months ago. Then we also have Trojana, which is the tourism destination in the mountains, and which just a few days ago won the rights to hold the 2029 Asian Winter Games. And then we also have Oxygen, which is the sort of industrial hub, floating industrial complex along the coast to the south there. The project is really only just started. There's some $13 billion of contracts already awarded, primarily around building the basic infrastructure, the logistics hubs, the worker accommodation, and so on, the roads, water pipelines, power facilities, the airport, and so on. So let's look at the line first of all. As I mentioned, this is 170 kilometers long. It will, of course, be built in phases. And essentially, it's a 200-meter up to 500-meter high mirrored building running along the course of the total length of the project. Underneath it will be the basic infrastructure and high-speed rail links, which will allow residents, of which there will be up to 9 million, be able to travel between the different modules of the project. So it will be built in, as I mentioned, modules. There's going to be approximately 135 modules along the length, and each one will be built or designed by a separate architect and then being built separately across the different phases. Within each module, there will be basic facilities such as municipal, institutional projects as well, to serve each of all of the people living within each of those modules. So it's a massive project. The basic earthworks and piling works have already started. Sino Hydro, Power China, and a couple of other contractors already started work on that. And this is clearly going to be something that's going to take more than a decade to complete. And this is a very exciting project. As I mentioned, each of the different modules, the 135 different modules built along the line, will comprise different self-contained elements: retail space, office space, educational, institutional, health, and hospitality elements. There will also be along the line key iconic projects such as the Hidden Marina, where the line crosses over the sea, which includes a major world scale marina project. There will be a major football stadium. There will also be a cantilever over the edge at the end of or beginning of the project, which will stretch over the sea, also a very significant project in itself. And alongside the line, there are also elements outside of the line itself, such as this Sindala luxury resort, which is currently under construction, and various other components that will be built over time. Clearly as well, such a massive project will need very extensive transport, water and utilities networks. Under the backbone infrastructure, there is a very extensive water network being built alongside the high-speed railway, and of course alongside the different power substations and power cables and so forth. The line, like all other Saudi Giga projects, is going to be a green development, carbon neutral, using renewable energy, primarily solar, to power it, and which will also, of course, power things like desalination and other critical infrastructure elements. Here's just some images of how the project is going so far. As you can see, massive, absolutely massive earthworks going on, $4 billion of tunneling earthworks required, considering that the project is 170 kilometers long. You can imagine the scale of the operation that's currently ongoing and is planned. And hopefully these images just give you a sort of idea of the scale. Now, as I mentioned, there are three main components or regions of NEOM. The second major element is Trojana, which is the touristic element of the project in the mountains to the north and northeast of the line. This will be centered around a major lake, 2,000 meters high in the mountains, and around this lake there will be various different elements such as the observatory, the vault, which includes an auditorium, which have its own microclimate. There will be a dam element, an adventure sports facility, of course, hotels, and various different residential mansion, townhouse and villa elements as well. So it's going to be a touristic resort that will cater to all different elements, touristic elements. And of course, in the summer, it's a lot cooler, so it's a good escape for tourists in the region. And then in the winter with snow, it's able to hold events like the Asian Games in 2029, but also other Nordic skiing type pastimes. So on this construction, on the infrastructure works are basically underway. There's also the need to connect the mountains by road. So road construction is underway. Water pipelines, of course, also have to be pumped up and down. So that is going to be also, that is also under construction as we speak. The third region of NEOM is the Oxygen. It's the world's largest floating structure. You can see it here in this image. It has an onshore and offshore component and a major industrial port. It's aimed at attracting foreign investment, industrial investments around different clusters, such as a brine cluster using water brine for the development of different industries. But there will also be a logistics hub, an innovation, high-tech hub as well. It, of course, require various different container terminals and port and logistics elements as well, and is essentially a clean or sustainable industrial city, similar to something like Jubail, Yanbu, or Rabigh, which you already find in the kingdom, but focus much more on cleaner, high-tech industries. That's in the northern cluster, the Oxygen, the port and Oxygen itself. Towards the south, in the southern cluster, is really where the green hydrogen plant is focused, where there'll be a massive amount of renewable energy to power the electrolysis facility, which will be joined with an air separation unit to create hydrogen, and then in turn convert it to ammonia for export. Alongside it will be a major data center. Of course, there'll be a desalination plant as well, and a modular construction facility. And again, it's around this green hydrogen that other industries will be able to develop under a cluster. And currently, NEOM is seeking investors to come in and invest in their facilities in the Oxygen area. So the line is about residential, Trojana is really about tourism, and Oxygen is really about the bringing in the businesses and the jobs and industry. Looking a bit more into that southern cluster, you can see here the different elements and the progress made so far. I won't go through each one, but as you can see, there are many different components as part of the southern cluster, the air separation unit, as I mentioned, things like ammonia storage tanks, the different solar and wind facilities to provide the renewable energy for the electrolysis, and so on. And indeed, the hydrogen plant is currently under construction. Okay, so that's a brief overview of some of the key components of NEOM. A lot of work already awarded, $13 billion or so, and another $400 billion plus of work to come over the next decade or so. Next up, I want to look at well, quite a different project, but just as interesting, which is the development of the Al Ula UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, this is a $15 billion cultural touristic program in the Al Ula region towards the northwest of Saudi Arabia, not too far away from Tabuk and Neom itself. And this is, interestingly, is being done in conjunction with the French state under the terms of an intergovernmental agreement. So the French government is assisting the Saudi authorities with the master planning, design, and implementation of the project. And as you can see, it's split on. You can see from the map, it's split over different areas along the Wadi and the Al Ula region, focusing on revitalizing and bringing to the fore the historical and cultural elements of Al Ula. And as you can see from this image, there is a really very ancient cultural sites at Al Ula, very similar to Petra in a way, which remain really unexplored to many people, and which are clearly a very interesting and attractive tourist destination for many people around the world. So it not only involves the rejuvenation of multiple districts and trails along the Al Ula Valley, but it includes a 46-kilometer long tram system. It includes multiple hotels, more than 5,000 hotel keys. And as with all other Saudi Giga projects, it's a clean project using renewable energy, and will also require various utilities such as a desalination plant and so on. So this is not a major project. And just to go into it a bit more details, as I said, there are 5 different districts along the Wadi. Each of them will require investment in museums, in redesigning or rebuilding some of the older elements, providing touristic facilities, and providing all the infrastructure that's required to house and to house and transport tourists around. As I mentioned, there is a tram network. There is already built the world's largest mirror-clad building called Al Maraya, as you can see there. And work is really only just started on the overall project. The out to bid is already the infrastructure contract for the tram network, and there are billions of dollars of projects yet to come. I think the first hotel is already open, and many other high-end hotels to come. Just to give you a little, sort of a basic breakdown of the different elements of Al Ula and the various different districts, what's each of the different packages and contractual elements comprise. Here you just get a feel for that and some of the companies involved. As you can see, some major large international consulting firms have been involved in the master planning, the different transport elements, the urban guidelines, and so on. And you can see it's a highly collaborative approach, and we expect more actual construction elements to come to market over the next few months and years ahead. And incidentally, it is information like this and in the previous slides that you've seen, which are you'll be able to find in the report that I mentioned earlier. Just for those of you who may have joined a bit late, this presentation is not only being recorded to be able to download and view in your own time later on, but you should, for those who have registered, you should receive or have already received a copy of this presentation in PDF format in your emails already. So check your emails, you should already have found this presentation. And once I finish this, I will take some questions from you. If you do have any questions about the Saudi Giga Project program, please enter them into the chat box and the Q&A box, and I will get round to answering them during the Q&A session. Just looking at a bit more detail into the some of the districts and some of the work required, as you can see here, this is District 3 and 4, Jabal Ikma and the Nabataean Horizon. As you can see, as part of those, there was 7 hotels, there's a couple of museums, 2 villages, Equestrian, Nabataean, there's a tram line, there's the development of farms, and there's also the Mariah Hall building, which is the world's largest mirror-clad building. So a lot of different work either already under construction or to come. Right, let's go through some of the other Giga projects. I haven't got time to go through all 14, 15, so I've taken a selection of them just to illustrate some of the projects and what's currently happening on them. So in going to Riyadh now, as part of the Riyadh Mega or Giga Project program, we have Riyadh Sports Boulevard, which we estimate to be about $5 billion. This is a 135-kilometer long corridor focusing on sports and outdoor activities that runs through the center of Riyadh, alongside the major road arteries in the capital. It has some 44 million square meters of green spaces, and 2.3 million plots will be made available for private sector investment. And along the route, there'll be some 50 different sporting facilities across 8 different unique districts, each one of them with their own different flavors. You get an idea of the route and the different elements in the map in the bottom left-hand corner. As you can see, there'll be things like cinema complexes, a sports tower, water canal, an arts district, and so on. So a very interesting project that is really aimed alongside those other 3 mega projects in Riyadh, King Salman International Park, which is this particular project here, you can see here, and Green Riyadh, which involves the beautification of Riyadh through the planting of millions of trees, and Riyadh Art, which is basically a program for the installation of art, sculptures, and art in general across the capital, all of which are aimed really at making Riyadh a more attractive place to live, a more livable place to live. And if you've been in Riyadh recently, or if you live in Riyadh, you'll have seen there's a lot of infrastructure work already going on as part of these 4 Giga projects within the capital. So work on the Sports Boulevard is already underway. As you might expect, there's a lot of infrastructure work required along the route, a lot of earthworks required, and already we've seen more than $750 million of contracts awarded along the route, and well, clearly billions of dollars more of contracts and packages to be tendered and let over the next few months and years. So another very interesting and very exciting project. As is the Red Sea Tourism Project, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the most advanced of all the Saudi Giga projects in terms of construction progress. Indeed, the first hotel has already opened up on the Red Sea as part of the project. It covers some 28,000 square kilometers and is built around 90 untouched islands on the Red Sea coast, of which about 15 are being developed as part of the project. So there's multiple hotels being developed, not just on those islands along the coast, but also inland as well. And to date, I think there's about $6.6 billion worth of contracts already awarded, over 1,000 individual contracts themselves. So we're about, well, a little over a third of the total investment value has already been spent. And underneath here, you can see just some of the big contracts already out in the market or under design. Many more, as you can see, have already been awarded. And these are just a selection of some of those contracts. There are dozens more currently out to to bid. So this is a project which will be open, if not, it hasn't already opened to the public very soon. Several more hotels will be finished by the end of 2023. The airport is also under construction, and it will be, as I said, open for business very soon. So this is a very key development in the Saudi Giga Project program, because it is the most advanced and has shown that these projects can be developed successfully. Another project also well underway is Roshan, which is the affordable housing program, Giga Project in the kingdom, which basically aims to build affordable housing for Saudi nationals in various cities across the kingdom. Now, the first project, called Sedra, is already under construction in the north of Riyadh. That's basically going to be 30,000 homes. You can see that here in this image. It's part of the program to have 70% of homes in the kingdom owned by Saudi nationals by 2030. So as part of the first phase of Sedra, we've already seen $1 billion worth of contracts awarded, and to the likes of India's Shapoorji Pallonji, Razaik Al Ghedwari, but also Siemens has been involved in the electrical infrastructure. And this is just the first phase of 8 as part of the project. And it's not just villas, of course, there's a road network, there's basic infrastructure, there's going to be mosques, schools, malls, healthcare facilities, and so on. Now, Sedra is just the first project under Roshan, which is $90 billion in total. And next we have is Al Arus, which is, I believe, 18,000 houses in Jeddah. And there are various other smaller housing programs in different cities of Saudi Arabia. For example, we already have work underway and in bidding in Al-Hajj, Hufuf, Qatif, and Asir. Now, in a presentation last year, CEO of Roshan, David Grovey, said that they expect spending to peak at more than $15 billion in 2025 a year as part of the 10-year investment plan. Now, and about 35 billion riyals, or just under $10 billion this year. I think it's fair to say we haven't reached those figures yet, but it's just indicative of the ambitious spending plans envisaged as part of this fast-tracked project. So again, this itself alone is more than many countries award in a single year. So for a huge Giga project in itself. Next up, we have Amala, which is being developed by the Red Sea Development Company, as is the Red Sea project. This is a similar high-end luxury resort destination to the north of the Red Sea project. It covers about 4,000 square kilometers. It covers 3,000 hotel rooms across 25 hotels. And so far, we've seen more than 300 contracts worth more than $1.7 billion already awarded, underway on the project. And we already have another $1.6 billion worth of contracts currently out to bid in the market. And a selection of those you can find up here on the top right. You can see the major utilities package, which will be done on a PPP basis, is under evaluation. We've also, of course, got the airport works. We have the Marine Life Institute, various hotels and so on, also under bidding or underway. So another very significant tourism destination. And then finally, today we'll go over also the Saudi Downtown Company. This project was launched last week and is likely to be not the last of the Giga projects announced. I'm sure there will be more announced over the next year or so. This Saudi Downtown Company is basically aimed at developing mixed-use projects in some of the more outlying, smaller cities in the kingdom. You can see what those 12 cities are in the map in the bottom right-hand corner. But this in total amounts to about 10 million square meters. The Saudi Downtown company will act as the master developer, so will build basic infrastructure and basic facilities, and then is expected to attract private sector investment to develop plots alongside them. And this is just also goes to show that the Saudi Giga Project program is a program that is for all parts and elements of Saudi society, not just in the major cities, but also to develop some of the smaller residential communities as well. So this is very recent project, so the few details yet as to the timeline or even investment values required, but this is just indicative of of new and probably other future projects to come as part of this Giga Project program in the kingdom. So as we've seen a very significant acceleration in project activity as part of the Giga Project program in the kingdom. We have seen $13 billion of Saudi Giga projects awarded this year, and just seeing what we've just seen from these 4 or 5 example projects, there is clearly a huge amount of work to come, and there's going to be a very clear acceleration in project activity. And if I total up the indicative amount of work to come for not only the Giga Project program, but also the other major projects in the kingdom, including those in the oil and gas, power and water, and other private sector spaces, roads, airports, railway lines, ports, residential communities, and so on, then there is clearly a very substantial amount of work due over the next few years. Now, on this left-hand slide, you can see that across all sectors between 2011 and 15, we saw some $281 billion of contracts in total awarded over that time in the kingdom. We saw that number dip to $172 billion between 2016 and 2021. But if we are to if all of the schedules are to be met on the Giga Project program and on other project programs by the likes of SWCC, SEC, Aramco, and so on, then we could well see up to $570 billion of work to be tendered and awarded over the next couple of years and up to 2025. Now, this is obviously a very significant increase on work awarded over the last 5 years, a 230% increase. And that in itself is very exciting, lots of opportunities, but it also throws into question just how exactly Saudi Arabia is going to deliver this massive increase in project activity. Does it have the engineering, the logistical, the manpower, the contracting and financing capability to simply deliver this amount? Now, even if this figure is overly ambitious and projects do get delayed, it's still indicative of a very significant ramp up. And certainly this is something that is at the center of attention right now from not just PIF, but other key project companies like Aramco, like SEC, like the Ministry of Transport, for example, on how exactly the kingdom is going to come and deliver this increased amount of work. Now, in terms of the value of work remaining, well, as you can see, we've only really touched the surface of the Giga Project program. We've still got more than 95% of the total value of work to come. In terms of the pipeline, well, we've got NEOM at $480 billion. In fact, NEOM is so large, it would distort the graph if I included it in, so I had to put it in separately. This is going to be a major investment over the next 10, 20 years, and it in itself is going to keep the market busy for generations to come. In terms of the other Giga projects, well, we've got Russia with more than $85 billion of known future projects coming. The Royal Commission for Riyadh City with the mega projects program there, the Queen Riyadh, Salmon International Park, and so on. We've got Jeddah Central, which is a $20 billion program, which has only just really started. Demolition of some of the the urban components or center of Jeddah is underway, and there will be a major development coming up there very soon. Diriyah Gate, which is well underway. As you saw, the super basement contract was awarded earlier this year to rebuild, and there are various high-end hotels, but also a golf course, some very exclusive residential areas, commercial district and residential areas to come and under construction, and of course the basic utilities infrastructure as well. Al Ula, which we talked about earlier, the Red Sea Development Company is well underway, a lot of work to come. Ruhr Medina, which is about creating a pilgrim and tourist infrastructure and expanding it in city of Medina. Qiddiya work is well underway on the Six Flags theme park, but also some of the other districts there, which is involves sports, a Formula One racetrack, other different touristic and leisure facilities. This is also well under construction, and we'll see much contracting activity in the next few years. Amala, as we mentioned, and then as some of the other projects such as Suda, which is in Asir, involving the development of the Asir region. 7, the Saudi Entertainment Ventures, which is about building entertainment facilities across different cities. And then Saudi Downtown and Boutique Group, which is about building boutique hotels across the kingdom. In terms of top future projects, here on the left-hand side, we've got some of the key contracts currently out to bid. As I mentioned, we've got the Amala Utilities package, we've got the tramway infrastructure in Al Ula, we've got motion cores, part of Qiddiya, we've got water pipelines, we've got community homes as part of Sedra and Al Roshan, we've got airport packages, we've got more earthworks, so dredging, key wall packages on NEOM, and so on. This is just a selection of some of the key projects currently out to bid. And on the right-hand side, again, just a selection of some of the bigger projects in design, where we've got the high-rise mirror towers, part of the first element of the line project for NEOM. We've got Wadi Safar Resort as part of Diriyah Gate. We've got the first phase of Jeddah Central. We've got the high-speed railway network, first phase, and NEOM. We've got residential, renewable energy, airport, desalination facilities as well, all in the longer-term pipeline. Of course, this is just touching the surface. There are thousands, literally thousands, tens of thousands of future packages and contracts as part of the Giga Project program. Just a word really on how companies can participate in the Giga Project program. Well, it's quite, in one way it's quite simple, in other ways it's a little bit more complex. There is no central procurement process for the different packages, supply contracts on the Giga Projects program. Companies need to register separately and individually with each project client. So you have to register as a vendor with NEOM, you have to register separately for Red Sea Project Company, you have to register separately for Diriyah Gate, for example. But once you're registered with each of the project companies, you are able to then receive and be pre-qualified to bid for tenders as they are issued. Here's an example, which is NEOM, but a very similar process is followed by each of the other project clients. Visibility on the future work and contract breakdown and timeframes on each of the Giga projects is quite low, unfortunately, and this is one of the major criticisms of the Saudi Giga Project program, is that it's not possible for vendors, suppliers, contractors to fully be able to allocate resources, because it's not really very much known what the time frame and the breakdown of future work is, and therefore it can become difficult for companies to be able to know which clients to target, because clearly it's not possible for everyone to be able to target all 15 Giga Project companies. They're just too located in too many different locations, and would stretch companies too thin. So it is necessary for companies to register, hopefully in order to get a bit more visibility on what is coming up. Now, just finally looking at the challenges in the Giga Projects program. Yes, there are a huge amount of opportunities, and but in turn, given that there's such a large value of work at the same time, in such a fast-paced and accelerated manner, there are of course going to be challenges in terms of delivery. Now, some of the projects are quite remote, such as our Neom Amula Red Sea project, and it has been a huge investment has had to be made in ensuring that there's a logistical supply chain in place, not just in terms of accommodating workers and so on, but ensuring that things like cement, concrete, rebar, steel, and other key materials are able to be supplied on time and at the lowest possible cost to these facilities. So that can be a challenge, especially with the increase in transportation costs and basic cost inflation over time. So that is, of course, one of the key challenges. Likewise, another challenge, particularly in terms of implementation and procurement, is that there's a fast track. The fast track nature of the program means that sometimes designs are not always fully complete before projects are procured and tendered. It does sometimes raise costs, and it does mean that it can be quite a stressful environment for some of these Giga projects to be delivered. Likewise, there is in some projects quite a high turnover of staff on the project implementation side, which of course, as you would expect, can disrupt project continuity. And as I referenced earlier, looking at some of the indicative acceleration of projects, it's not clear as yet if there is a sufficient contracting material capacity to be able to deliver the projects program, especially given that we're still only at the early stages, and especially as the work ramps up. There are reports and anecdotal evidence that clients are struggling to attract enough contractors with the capacity to be able to deliver their programs, and there is a bit of a scramble to be able to secure resources. And don't forget, of course, that this scramble is not just within the Saudi Giga Projects program itself, but amongst other clients as well. So not only are the Giga Project clients looking or nailing down resources and contracting capability, but there are also other clients like Aramco, SWCC, the National Housing Company, and other key clients in the kingdom are also going to be doing exactly the same. I think also to date, as I mentioned, the Giga Project program is also very much focused on attracting international investment. There will at some point have to be private sector investment, both local and international, coming in on these projects to fully develop them. Now, so far, particularly as we're still at the infrastructure stages of many of these projects, it has been government financed, but there hasn't really been a huge amount of foreign investment so far. And if the Giga Project program is to be a success, then we do need to start seeing an increase in foreign investment on these projects. So time will tell how that will take place and how that will happen, but I'm sure behind the scenes there is a lot of conversations going on around the world about investors coming in to invest on these Giga projects. Likewise, as I mentioned, these projects are being financed by the state up till now, but at some point the government is also going to want these Giga project clients to be self-financing. We've already seen the Red Sea Development Company secure a 14 billion Riyal credit loan facility, revolving credit facility. So it can be done, and this loan was without recourse to the PIF, the Red Sea Development Company owner. So it can be done. But at some point as well, the projects are going to have to become commercially stand on their own 2 feet, and we'll see how that pans out. But of course, that will very much depend on their efforts to attract foreign investment, and also to a less extent be able to commercialize some of their individual project elements, such as, for example, housing elements, and attract tourists, of course. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Just again, before I go to the Q&A session, wanted to just illustrate or again highlight the fact that we've got a massive 400-page plus report coming out at the end of this month on the Saudi Giga Project program, similar to like some of the slides that I've presented here today, but in far more detail, far greater length and depth. We are providing a complete rundown of each and every Saudi Giga project, along with all the key packages, breakdowns, past, current, and future, as well as description of the key project elements, the key personnel that you need to contact, and decision makers and stakeholders in each project, and some of the key data, contract data as well. So if you're interested in that, we are offering everyone here today a $100 discount using this code. Please visit buy.meed.com to buy the report online, and further details of that report will be sent to you in the email with this presentation that you'll have received during the course of the last 45 minutes or so. Right. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. Now I will attempt to go through and answer your questions. I can see we've got some 60 plus questions from the audience, so I will try and answer them as quickly and as much detailed as I can. So question, does Saudi Arabia intend to implement, obviously these projects need a lot of water, does Saudi Arabia intend to build long distance water pipelines to serve these projects? Most of these projects are using, well, the ones in more remote areas are using local desalination plants, all of which will be powered by renewable energy. So there will not be any specific long distance transmission pipelines, although when you're talking about something like NEOM, there is quite a long distance between the sea and some of the elements of the project. So there will be some quite lengthy transmission pipelines, for example, from the desalination plant all the way to the mountain of Trojana. But most of them will be captive plants serving the projects themselves using reverse osmosis technology, and powered by renewable energy. Question here, do I have any information on the Saudi land bridge project and the Medina tunnel project? Well, these are not, the topic of the conversation today is really on the Giga Project program, but yes, we expect the Saudi land bridge, which is a railway line, passenger and freight railway line between Jeddah, Riyadh and Dammam. We are already seeing that conversations are now underway. Tenders have been submitted for the project management consultancy contract, and it remains to be seen whether this will be implemented by directly between the Chinese government and the Saudis, or whether it will instead be tendered out in about 12 packages to local and international contractors. So we expect to see that happen soon. The Medina contract was already awarded the tunnel to Chinese contractor a couple of months ago for about $900 million. What is the expected completion for NEOM? Is the next question. NEOM is likely to be completed over a long period of time, as you would expect, having seen it. First phase really will likely be delivered by about 2030, and second and third phases over the following 10 years. But you know, that's a long time, and things may change. The first initial elements of it, like Trojana, will be open by 2026. But in terms of something like the line, you're looking at a slightly longer period for completion. Other projects in the Giga Project program are expected to be completed over the next 3 years. Qiddiya, for example, by 2024, 2025. Diriyah Gate by 2024. The Red Sea project is already open in parts and is expected to see quite a large component of it completed by next year. But we're seeing most of these projects, at least the first or second phases of those, to be completed over the next 2 or 3 years, which is why we're going to see a very significant ramp up in project activity, because there is a lot of pressure for these projects to be completed and to hit their announced schedules. Right. what do you think will be the borrowing requirements on an overall basis from banks outside of the kingdom? Well, we're talking about many of these projects over time to need to be financing the projects themselves. We've got huge capital expenditure values, and therefore there's going to be a likely requirement for a huge amount of borrowing as well. And in many cases, this borrowing will not have recourse or be guaranteed by the government or by the PIF, as we've seen in the Red Sea projects revolving loan facility. Now, so local banks are expected to play a major role in this. In fact, there were 4 local banks in the Red Sea project financing, but due to the sheer amounts required for borrowing, it's almost inevitable that some international banks will also have to be involved in these projects. So I would say there's quite a good expectation that international banks will be involved in the financing of these projects. Okay, so this is a good question. My understanding that there is a drive to buy Saudi, or in other words, use locally sourced resources, content, people, and materials on these projects in Saudi Arabia. What is the potential for other materials to be sourced from other countries? Well, yes, there is a very strong localization drive in Saudi Arabia, which is natural and rational. But the sheer scale of the program means that there is almost certainly not going to be enough resources or capacity within the kingdom itself to simply supply all of these projects. So as we've seen a lot of international contractors already coming in and winning work, so too we are likely to see also a lot of international equipment materials also being supplied. We already seen that international export credit financing agencies and export agencies have or will underwrite some of the work being carried out on the Giga Project program, and therefore there's also the expectation that there will also be a significant amount of international input onto these projects in the form of materials and contracting. So I would expect that quite a significant amount of work will be secured from outside the region. King Abdullah Economic City, is that considered one of the Giga projects? What are the latest developments there? Now, King Abdullah Economic City is an older project which was conceptualized about 15 years ago. It lies close to Riyadh and is in many ways similar to something like Jubail on the East Coast, except the King Abdullah Economic City is on the West Coast and Red Sea coast. So it's not part of that development. I think it's fair to say that the King Abdullah Economic City project hasn't been as successful as it was first hoped. And certainly there are a lot of lessons that can be learned for projects like NEOM from the King Abdullah Economic City experience. That said, the Lucid electric car vehicle manufacturer recently announced it was going to set up its manufacturing facility in King Abdullah Economic City. So there's still plenty of potential left to come, but it has the potential of being crowded out somewhat by NEOM if it's not careful. Are there any consultants or contractors from the USA on these projects? Well, I mean, there are the likes of companies like KBR, Bechtel, and Fluor certainly have potential. Lots of long-standing tradition of working on Saudi projects, and I'm sure already active and will continue to work on these projects. There will be plenty of scope for American architectural firms as well. There aren't, beyond that, there aren't that many US civil contractors active in Saudi Arabia, but I'm sure the clients will be more than keen to have them come on board and be qualified for them. because as I mentioned before, there just aren't enough local, regional, international contractors active in the kingdom to be able to deliver all these plans. So if you are not active in the Middle East or in Saudi Arabia, this is a perfect opportunity to come in and participate in the Giga Project program. As to date, we've seen the Chinese contractors be very successful on the Giga Project program. We've also seen the likes of Samsung come in on the tunneling on NEOM. We've seen Rebuild win the big $1 billion super basement in the Diriyah Gate. We've also seen Bouygues come in on the Qiddiya project, another very large contract. So there are international contractors coming in, and I'm sure we will see many more win work on the program as time goes by. Do you have to register as a company in Saudi Arabia to participate? Yes, you almost certainly have to be locally registered, incorporated in the kingdom, particularly if you're a contractor, or at least have an agent or distributor if you're importing materials or suppliers to these contracts. Saudi Arabia is very keen on localization, and indeed has already set a rule that companies' regional headquarters need to be located in the kingdom by 2024 if they are to participate on government projects. So it is going to be very much a case of companies needing to set up office, or at very least have an agent within the kingdom to participate. What is the rough breakdown in funding for these projects, i.e. government spending versus other investment that can be attracted? It's a good question. So far, almost all of the spending has been directly government financed through the PIF from its own bond programs, from the sale of 5% sale of shares in Saudi Aramco, from its own assets as well. But going forward, it is expected that the projects will be more self-sustaining finance-wise, and we will see how that pans out. At this moment in time, it's not really possible to be able to state what that ratio or percentage breakdown will be, but we know from up till now about 95% of all projects have been financed, spending has been financed directly by the state. Not really surprising, given that most of this is in terms of basic infrastructure like earthworks and so on, which wouldn't really be able to be financed otherwise. The question here really about oil prices and how how oil prices might affect spending on the Giga Project program. Well, as we know, oil prices are sitting above $80, $90 a barrel, which means that the government does have a lot of additional income, which it can help to finance these projects. But there is also potential, especially if the world enters a global recession, that the oil prices reduce dramatically, and therefore there were concerns that spending might also drop on the Giga Projects program. I think this will be offset somewhat by the PIF, which is borrowing on its own to finance some of these projects, and in the hope also that these projects will become a bit more self-financing and less dependent on government finance funding, and therefore on the oil price. But we'll see what the impact of that is. But so far, it does look like there are sufficient funds and plentiful funds for these projects to be financed and budgeted for, at least in the short term. PPP projects, what is the role of PPP projects on the Giga Project program? Well, PPP until now has really been limited to the energy and water elements of the Giga Project. So, for example, on NEOM, Aquapower is the developer of the renewable energy project, and NEOM itself will offtake the electricity and water produced at a set tariff, and Aquapower will finance and develop the solar and wind elements of the renewable project itself, similar to what's happening also in the Red Sea project and Amala. These are really where the PPP elements are for the time being, but over time I expect more and more individual elements of the program will be financed, owned and operated by the private sector, but we'll wait and see how that pans out. Question here about, similar to question about battery energy storage. So there are discussions underway about battery energy storage on the Red Sea project and NEOM and Amala, because they are remote, they're not connected to the grid. It makes sense for them to have their own energy storage systems, and that they are likely to use battery energy storage on their projects. And indeed, I think the final decision is being made on NEOM, whether that's the case. But I think that's already decisions already been taken on Red Sea project, and others will wait and see. But battery energy storage has been slow to really kick off in the region, mainly because most networks are highly centralized under one state utility, and has been less need. But now that we are looking at more remote projects and captive renewable energy facilities, then this is something that's certainly going to be looked at in more detail, and will offer some opportunities. A question again about the water and electricity requirements on these projects. Well, I mean, NEOM alone needs 4 gigawatts for the green hydrogen project, which will be built over phases. And then, of course, that's without taking into account the electricity requirements for city for 9 million people, as well as the desalination requirements for, I don't know, 500,000 cubic meter a day desalination plant. So we're looking at very significant amounts of power and water required for these locations, probably up to 1 million cubic meters a day, maybe more over the next 5-6 years, and well, probably up to 10 gigawatts of electricity, renewable energy capacity as well. So very significant amount, but obviously there's no official figure for those at the moment. Okay, so question here, how can we participate or invest in the Giga Projects program? Well, if you look at each of the project companies and clients, they do all have, they're all aimed at attracting investment locally and internationally. They are looking for ideas. They are looking for companies to come in and have discussed with them what they can contribute. And they will welcome future foreign investors and foreign companies with open arms. So if you do have an idea, or you want to bring in investors, or you want to invest yourself, then you can contact each of the project companies, set up a meeting and talk with them. In the report that I was talking about, we do have a section of the key personnel and names and positions of each of the people on the Giga Project program, along with their contact details. So if you are interested in knowing who, for example, the chief investment officer or chief commercial officers are on these projects, you'll be able to find that in each of the reports. Who is a developer of Roshan? Is it all by PAF? Yes, Roshan, the affordable housing Giga Project developer, is fully owned by PIF. However, Roshan has been providing plots or outsourcing some of the development to private sector real estate developers in the kingdom. And so over time, some of the Roshan program is likely to be developed by local real estate developers. And yes, so there are some third-party developers on Roshan, which is similar to the National Housing Company program, where some of the projects or real estate projects are being developed by the government directly through the National Housing Company, and some are being developed by third-party developers. Okay, can I have some information on the Giga projects in the southern region of Saudi Arabia, in Abha, Khamis, Mashaykh, Jizan, and others? Well, we've seen Al Arabian Highland and Al Suda being announced for the development of south of the kingdom in the Asir region. However, details of those projects are quite scarce at the moment. There isn't a huge amount of visibility on what they involve and the timeframes for them. But I do expect, especially following the Saudi Downtown Company announcement about the mixed-use developments in places like Jizan, that we will see some more Giga project clients emerge for the development of some of these outlying regions in the kingdom. It is a priority for the government as part of the Saudi 2030 vision, and I expect to see more, as I said, more announcements on for some of those projects over time. Do you have a view on the amount spent on consulting and advisory firms? Clearly, all of these projects have been master planned, have been designed, are being project managed by a huge number of international, regional, local consultancy firms. If we've seen $13 billion worth of construction contracts awarded already on the Giga Project program, then we could well expect to have seen already $1 to $2 billion worth of consulting design work as well already awarded. And well, I mean, given you've got a $700 billion capital expenditure program on the Giga Projects program, I mean, you would expect a good, in the next 10, 20 years, a good $50 billion of consulting work required. So a huge opportunity, not just for suppliers and contractors, but also for consulting firms as well. Is the bids for the Giga Project program open by invitation, or are they public? So this is the interesting aspect of the Giga Project program, is that there is no public bidding process for the Saudi Giga Projects. You cannot go to a web page and see what each of the individual tenders are and when they are coming out and how to bid. They are all private, and you can only participate by being pre-qualified or invited directly by the project company. So you have to register with each of the project companies to be put on the list of companies invited. So you cannot just, there's no public tender board, for example, to be able to just participate. You do need to be specified as a vendor on each of the project companies. So that again goes round to this lack of visibility. But you know, this is where really some things like MEED projects, where we identify all the many hundreds of different packages out to bid at the moment. This is where, you know, MEED projects comes in with the details of such projects, and also where you can, you know, from in documents like the report, you'll be able to get an idea of some of the future work and the breakdown of different contracts can be. Can you shed some light on the largest contractors who will execute these Giga projects? Well, earlier in the slide, I showed you some of the top contractors, top 20 contractors so far in the Giga project program, likes of Shiba Jazeera, Samsung C&T, China State, Larsen Toubro, Bouygues, WeBuild, and Nesman Partners, Al-Mabani, and so on. Basically, there is no limit on limitation put on international contractors or local contractors. In fact, there aren't enough contractors. So if you are able to deliver these big projects and you want to deliver on these projects, then you need to pre-qualify and register with each project company, and you will be able to have an opportunity to bid, tender and bid for them. Another question, which is not really a Giga project, which is the King Abdullah city for atomic and renewable energy. That has really been a little bit on hold in the last couple of years, but we are expecting the Saudi nuclear program to kick off over the next couple of years, and for sure the King Abdullah city, atomic city, will play a role in that, although what specific role we're still not really clear. But that is something that is expected to develop, and we'll see more about what happens on that over the next couple of years. Who's financing these projects? Well, I think I've already answered that question. PIF and the government have been financing all the projects to date, but over time, the amounts borrowed by the project companies is expected to increase. Do you have a report for the projects that will finish in the next 2 years only? Yes, so in the report that we are publishing, the details of which are on the presentation, you will be able to find a time frame and have an idea of the contracts which are underway and which are due to be tendered and completed over the next couple of years. This figure, $569 billion, is it from the 23 to 2025 period? Well, it's from the 2021 to 2025 period. Last year, overall in Saudi Arabia, we saw $60 billion worth of contracts awarded. We're likely to see, $40 billion of contracts awarded last year. We're expected to see a little over that this year. So that, by inference, means that we are expecting to see a very significant acceleration of that figure next year, 2024 and 2025. Of course, this is indicative figures only. Projects are going to get delayed, cancelled, and so on. But even if even if only half of that comes to light, then it's still a very significant increase on the previous 5-year period. So yes, $569 billion is the indicative value of amount of work to be awarded in Saudi Arabia across all sectors between 2021 and 2025. 7, do you have any information on what the next tendering projects are for the 7 Saudi Entertainment Ventures projects in the kingdom? Yes, we've seen already the first couple of contracts awarded, Exit 10 in Al Nahda in Riyadh, and as I understand it, there are another half dozen or so contracts out to bid for similar projects in other cities of Saudi Arabia under the 7 program. And again, you can find the details of those in MEED projects and or in the Giga Projects report, which we highlighted today. Question, another one which is not part of the Giga Project program, but is a Giga Project, which is the Kingdom Tower, the world's tallest tower. Is it going to resume? It doesn't look like resumption is on the cards anytime soon, I'm afraid. But who knows what will happen. We visited the project just a couple of weeks ago, and it was still very much on hold. What platforms are used to announce the tender of the works? There is no platform to announce the tenders for the projects, the individual contracts in these projects. It's all private. You won't be able to find them anywhere. You can find them, however, on MEED projects if you subscribe, and you can also find them details of them in the Giga Projects report, which we have. But otherwise, you'll just have everyone has to just register with each of the individual project companies, pre-specified as a vendor, pre-qualified, and then hope to be invited when they issue their tenders. Yes. So in terms of that, going back to that $569 billion of projects indicatively expected to be awarded 2021 to 2025, it includes projects across all sectors. So that includes oil and gas, projects, some other project clients outside of the Giga Project program as well. How many residential units are expected to be built as a result of all the Giga Projects programs? What is the expected population growth as a result? As we've seen, Roshan alone in Sidra, North Riyadh, has 30,000 units. It has another 18,000 houses being built as part of the Al Arus project in Jeddah. NEOM wants 9 million residents over time. So you can expect to see many hundreds of thousands of housing units expected to be built, not just part of the Giga Project program, but as part of the overall residential building program in the kingdom. Population is rising very fast in Saudi Arabia. More than 50% of the population is under the age of 30, and therefore building affordable housing is a critical priority for the government. So I would expect, over the next 10, 15 years, 20 years, easily more than 1 million, 2 million housing units to be built in the kingdom. Is it right that the Red Sea Development Company portfolio will include some other developments along the Red Sea north and south of Jeddah? Well, you know, the Red Sea Development Company has also taken over responsibility for the development of Amala fairly recently. So it has now Amala and the Red Sea project under its purview. I have not heard any definite evidence that it's going to take on other projects along the Red Sea. However, I would not be surprised if over time that becomes the case, but I don't have any concrete information on that. On the Russian Al Arus project in Jeddah, do you have any announcement on do you have any information on the master plan or any news on the main contracts tendering? This is the Russian affordable housing project, 18,000 units in Jeddah. Used to be called Jeddah Waterfront, now it's called Al Arus. As I understand it, if I'm not mistaken, tendering has already started for some of the infrastructure work. So but I don't have the details off the top of my head, but you can certainly find it on MEED projects, and you can certainly find the details in the Giga Projects report I've just been talking about. How will a global recession, if it happens next year, how would this affect the economy and the Giga Projects program in general? Well, clearly the Saudi economy is, like all economies, would be affected by a global recession. A lot of it hinges, of course, on the oil prices. But the PIF has a massive $600 billion plus war chest. The government has a very significant surplus of cash as well. So it is, I would imagine that the Giga Project program, given its importance, given its prioritization, would comfortably survive a one-year recession next year, probably 2 years. If it goes on for longer than that, then there may well be problems. But as we can see it, when we're seeing now that work is beginning very clearly on the ground, the kingdom is really, I suppose, gone past the point of no return on a lot of these projects, and will deliver them, regardless of the economic situation. Do you have detailed instructions or guidelines how to register at NEOM? Well, I gave a quick slide on the process to register with NEOM. If you go to the NEOM website, you will see a supplier portal or vendor registration portal where you are able to input your details, namely, things like tax registration number, corporation number in Saudi Arabia, address, capitalization figures, and so on. You'll be able, and you can then register. It's quite a lengthy process, but on all these project companies. But if you go to the websites of these companies, you should be able to find details of how to register with them as a supplier or as a contractor. Once you are signed up on SAP Ariba, what are the next steps? And this is again regarding how to register or pre-qualify on the various different projects on the Giga Project program. Once you are, once you are registered on SAP Arabia, then you will have a point of contact with the various different project companies and be able to have a line of communication with them. But generally speaking, there will be some basic information on some of the upcoming projects on them. But then you will also be automatically invited to tender for projects within your specification or within your areas of capability and what you're pre-qualified for. Has there been any PPP contract already awarded or being evaluated by the PIF? Yes. The NEOM Green Hydrogen Project, PPP, which Aqua Power is developing, that has already been awarded with L&T. We believe building the renewable and the renewable solar and wind power plants on that. There's also been underway a PPP renewable energy project on the Red Sea project, also on Amala. These are the main PPP projects that I can think of off the top of my head so far, but there will be many more to come, I imagine. Given that there will be such a massive inflow and requirement for human resources, technical resources, talent, how is Saudi Arabia planning to explore and harness global talent and investors? Well, as we speak, each of the project companies are reaching out globally to international investors, to international contractors, companies and suppliers and so on, in order to be able to reach out to them and attract them into the kingdom. The kingdom is very open for foreign investment. It wants close to $100 billion a year foreign investment, if I'm not mistaken, under its long-term plan, which is a massive amount. And so it's trying to make it as easy as possible for talent investors to come in, but not just that as well, to make Saudi Arabia a great place to live, with more schools coming in, beautification ongoing, a sort of a liberalization of some of the laws ongoing as well, and it's doing everything it can to try and make it as an attractive investment destination as possible. It is open, and it's trying to make it the place to invest in the Middle East region. So time will tell whether it will be successful in doing that. Which of the projects we've talked about today has secured the majority of the funds needed to complete the project? Well, given that most of the projects are only very much still at the very early stages, it's very difficult to say. In fact, it's almost certain that projects like NEOM haven't got or secured the majority of the funds yet, because these runs into hundreds of billions of dollars, or on the other projects in the tens of billions of dollars. So it's almost certainly that it's so certain that most of them haven't secured all the funding yet, given that they're going to be taking place over years to come. But at the same time, the government is clearly committed to the Giga Projects program, has already financed billions of dollars of work, and is not going to give up, given how intrinsically linked these projects are to the Saudi 2030 vision. So I don't expect that to be a major problem going forward. But there will be increasing amounts of borrowing going on for these projects as well, I'm sure. Question about the Land Bridge project, I've already answered that. Work is, PMC bids already gone in for that, and we'll wait and see whether it's going to be done on an EPC plus F basis from the Chinese government, or whether it will be tendered on a traditional fashion to local and international contractors. Watch this space. In your long version report, do you also provide information on what companies are currently actively participating and on which projects? Yes, each of the packages and contracts we've got will all of them have contractors and consultants listed on them. So yes, you'll be able to see who's already been successfully working on them. Does MEED projects cover the details of each of the individual contracts on the Giga Project program? Yes, we do. For example, we have some 200 plus individual contracts on the NEOM program currently active in the market. We've got more than 100, I believe, on the Red Sea project, and many hundreds more on the other Giga Projects program. So if you do want the details, the values, the scopes, the consultant details, the contact details, the contractors, and timelines and bidding deadlines and so forth for each project and contract, then you can find those on meedprojects.com. And if you subscribe, you'll be able to get access to them. What about transportation on these projects? How is that being handled? Well, you're seeing that Amala, Red Sea Project, NEOM all have their own airports being expanded or being built. Obviously, they're very remote, so you need to have air transport links with them. In other projects, for example, Al Ula, you have a new tram system. You have, for example, Qiddiya will have the Riyadh Metro extended towards it. So there are going to be very extensive railway and airport links. And of course, multiple hundreds of kilometers of new roads are also being built as well. In NEOM, you're going to have a high-speed railway network underground, of course, as well. And the idea with these projects is that they're mostly green projects, carbon neutral, and therefore will use autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and will use the latest technologies, whether that's flying taxis or drone technologies, and so on. These will all be something which will be explored. So if you do have a concept or technology that you can bring to the table, then I'm sure the project companies will be very interested in hearing them out. Okay, I mean, we're approaching the time limit, so I'm not sure I'll be able to answer everyone's questions, unfortunately. I will just answer a couple of more. A question here about King Salman International Park in Riyadh. So King Salman International Park is basically the world's largest park being built in the center of Riyadh. So basically what's happened is the government has demolished the King Salman Air Base, which was previously in the middle of Riyadh, and relocated it And instead in that area, they're going to build this massive park complex, which will have cinemas, malls, residential areas, as well as a park itself. And work is already underway on the Royal Art Complex, which is part of the park itself. That's $1 billion plus contract. And again, you're going to see hundreds of contracts awarded on that over time: roads, utilities, basic infrastructure, green areas, and of course the buildings themselves, the malls, the cinemas, the residential areas, the offices, and so on. So that is another $5 billion plus project, and yeah, that will happen in parallel to the Sports Boulevard and Green Riyadh projects as well. It was in the media that the Diriyah Gate project will not be delivered on time. Can you confirm that? Well, it's true to say that most of these projects are on fast-track basis. They have very ambitious timelines. And in most cases, it is true that it's difficult to see how some of these projects will be delivered on the originally announced timeframes. Given the amount of progress so far, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to be delivered on time. So I would not be surprised if some of them are pushed back a bit. However, elements of them will be open on time. There are already projects being opened, and depending on the project, some will be closer to hitting their deadlines than others. But even if projects are a year late or 2 years late, you know, in many instances, you know, what does that matter? I mean, there's still the opportunity there. Work is still going on, and there's going to be work for many years to come. So, you know, inevitable in any project that there are sometimes delays. Well, I'll answer one more question if I can, to see if I can answer a particularly good question. Just one more question I'll answer. Okay. What are the projects Aqua Power is involved in? Aqua Power is the developer on the NEOM project, renewable energy project, and the hydrogen project, and is also the developer on, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Red Sea Power and Water project as well. Both of those on a PPP basis. Most of the Giga projects, and the last question I'll answer this, most of the projects presented today are on construction and infrastructure. Are there any other Giga projects in other fields, such as pharmaceuticals, data centers, hospitals, and so on? Well, the answer is yes and no, because these Giga projects will incorporate elements of those. So, for example, NEOM is essentially a new city, but it will also have data center elements, it will have hospital, healthcare elements. It wants to attract pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities. It wants to attract, of course, food and beverage facilities, and so on. So the Giga projects themselves are touristic, residential, commercial in nature, but they will certainly have as part of them many other you know, new economy types of and high-tech investments as well, such as data centers and healthcare and so forth. So there will be a lot. The only really sector that's not really part of the Giga project program is the oil and gas sector. They're really, you know, this is under the purview of Saudi Aramco, and you know, also heavy industry as well, such as you know, heavy steel, cement production, and so on. But cleaner, high-tech sectors, these will be parts by osmosis as part of the Giga project program. So I'm terribly sorry, I haven't been able to answer all of your questions. We had more than 100 of them, and we've run out of time. It's glad to see 500 people still on the call. We had, as I said, more than 2,500 people registered today. And I was looking at the registration list. We've got some of the world's biggest legal firms, the world's largest banks, the world's largest contractors. We've got more than 40 of the top 50 regional international contractors on here today, the world's largest consultants as well. So it's clearly a very, very hot topic. It's just the main game in town right now is where it is the Giga project program is where everyone is currently interested, and it's going to offer a really exceptional opportunity for many years to come. So if you're not involved in the Giga Project program, now is the time to get involved, pre-qualify, to set up in the kingdom, to bring in investment, and to be involved in the project delivery elements. As I said, you can find much more information on the Giga Project program in the report, which we have an offer for right now. And take a look at that, and also consider looking also at MEED.com and MEEDprojects.com, where you can also find a lot of information on the Giga Project program. So that's it from me for now. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you found it valuable and insightful. And I look forward to speaking to you all again soon on the next topic in our webinar series. Thank you very much. Goodbye.